Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the virtual tour of Amsterdam. My name is Jacob. We are Free Walking Tour Amsterdam. We provide tip-based tours so that anybody can enjoy a tour of Amsterdam. The idea is that it's donation-based. So whatever you feel it's worth to you at the end of the tour, this can be 5, this can be 10, this could be nothing. We're very happy with any appreciation you show at the end of this tour. My story will be 700 years of history of Amsterdam, from the moment that we were basically hovels in a swamp to the colonial era, and the end point will be right back here on the dam once again when we became a monarchy. The story of Amsterdam is one of trade, is one of money, is one of perseverance and innovation in what used to be swamp and bog, essentially. We are sometimes called the Venice of the North, and this is pretty poignant because Venice, much like Amsterdam, is a city of canals, an old city which has a reputation of trade as well, of technological innovation, the Renaissance, etc. But my aim and hope at the end of this tour is that you will start calling Venice the Amsterdam of the South, because nobody likes being number 2, so I hope to do that eventually. Without further ado, let me start with the very basic distinction between Holland and the Netherlands. Even the Dutch get this wrong sometimes. When we play soccer internationally, you'll hear us screaming and chanting Holland in the stands. And people who come from abroad will often say all of this is Holland. And here in Amsterdam, you're not exactly wrong, because the province of Holland is where we are right now, North Holland especially. But the entire country in and of itself is called the Netherlands, right? And what we mean by that is the nether, below the sea. But this is technically also wrong, because not the entire country of the Netherlands is below sea level. In fact, Holland is below sea level, most of it. Perhaps I should just show you. I'll show you an illustration of what I mean. This is a depth map of the Netherlands. As you can see, the dark blue areas, these are the countries which are technically below sea level. And this is where once upon a time used to be swamp, used to be ocean, and all these green areas is the mainland, definitely heading towards sea level, to be sure, but all of this is the Netherlands, whereas you could argue that these blue areas would be nether, below, if you will. Holland is in many ways a part of the country which was wrestled from the sea with dams, with technology in the 14th century. Even though there were people living here in the swamps trying to develop things, it was practically impossible, because with any amount of rainfall, these lands would be flooded. But, like I said, in the 14th century, new technological innovations allowed the people to live here to create a more permanent residence in Holland, if you will. What you have here is a schematic of a windmill. You may have wondered, what is the obsession that the Dutch have with the windmills? Well, without windmills, there would be no Holland, there would be no Netherlands, in this sense. The windmills, rather than milling grain as they were often used in the rest of the world, were for us also water pumps. Right? You look here, this screw, which we call a vijzel in Dutch, but in English it's more known as an Archimedes screw, is an archaic pump, an old pumping system, which allows you to draw water from a lower level and transport it through the windmill and eject it through the front. Imagine, if you will, that the Netherlands, being lower, below sea level, was all pumped out. The water was all pumped out, and the water was diverted into another area, which allowed us to manage it or use it for other purpose, desalinate it, for instance. And then what you're left with is the river delta, right? A lot of the rivers in Europe, they tend to end in this part of Northern Europe. So all of around us is river delta, and as you may know or may not know, the ground in a river delta is often very fertile lands for farming. And this is in fact why people undertook these huge feats of engineering and cooperation to get rid of the water and create very fertile farmlands. And yeah, that's the basis of what Holland and the Netherlands is. It's one giant community program, because without cooperation, this land would not have existed. So many people actually argue that the first workers' unions in history were here in the Netherlands, because it was these farmers, it was the inhabitants that lived here that decided to cooperate and in essence also form a bloc against the nobility that ruled these territories. But more on that at the next stop.